today's objective is equations and problem solving. We have some definitions to talk about. The first one is consecutive integers. Consecutive integers are integers that differ by 1. For example, 20 and 21 are consecutive integers. 45 and 46 would be consecutive integers. -2 and -1 would be consecutive integers. Okay. And we also need to know what consecutive even or odd integers are. They differ by 2 because it would be basically counting odd numbers. So 13 and 15, 6 and 8, okay, 3 and 5. Very important concept number 1. Some problems contain 2 or more unknown quantities. To solve such problems, first decide which unknown quantity the variable will represent. Then express the other unknown quantity or quantities in terms of that variable. Okay? So you need to make sure that you identify the variable first. What are we looking for? What does that letter represent? Examples. The length of a rectangle is 6 more than its width. Okay. The perimeter of the triangle is what it should say, excuse me, of the rectangle is 24. What is the length of the rectangle? Okay, so we have a rectangle here. We know that the length is 6 more than its width. So the first thing we have to do is define a variable. We are going to say that W represents the width. Okay? And from there we can define the length because we know that it is 6 more than the width. So if W is the width, W plus 6 is going to be my length. Okay? And from there we can set up an equation. They are asking for the perimeter of the rectangle. So perimeter is done by adding up all the different sides. So we could say that this is W and this is W plus 6. So we have 2 times W, okay, because we have 2 sides here. So 2 times W plus 2 times W plus 6. That should give me all the lengths of my sides, and it should total out to be 24. Okay. If you were to solve this equation, remember to do the distributive property. So we have 2W plus 2W plus 12 equals 24. And if you were to continue like we know how to do, we would come up with the width equaling 3. Okay. However, the question doesn't ask for the width, it asks for the length. So we need to pay attention to that, and we need to say, well, if we know the width is 3, and we know that the length is 6 more, we can just do 3 plus 6 and know that the length would equal 9. Okay. Number 2. The width of a rectangle is 2 centimeters less than the length. The perimeter is 16. What is the length? The first thing we need to do is define a variable. So L will equal length. Okay? If we know the length, we also know that the width is 2 less than that. So in order to find the width, we could just say L minus 2. You have to make sure that you identify your variables before you put them into the equation. Okay? Drawing a picture is often very helpful as well. So I know that I have 2 times my length plus 2 times what my width is should come out to give me the perimeter of 16. Okay? So if I solve that out, you would find that my length is 5. And that is exactly what the question is asking for. So you're fine to stop there. If they ask for the width, you could figure out the width and just say L minus 2. So 5 minus 2 would give you 3. Consecutive integers. Okay? Remember, consecutive integers are numbers that are right after each other, like 3 and 4, 5 and 6. So it says the sum of 3 consecutive integers is 147. Find those integers. Okay? So let's define our variable. Okay? We're going to let n be our first integer. I just picked the letter n, it doesn't matter. So n is my first integer. In order to get to my next integer, all I have to do is add 1, right? Because they're consecutive. So my second integer would be n plus 1. My third integer would be n plus 2. If I had a fourth integer, it would be n plus 3. okay? We're just adding 1 to that first integer, okay, to make it consecutive. If I know that the sum, meaning I add them all up, equals 147, I can say my first integer, which is n, plus my second integer, n plus 1, plus my third integer, n plus 2, gives me 147. If I were to solve this, I have 3n plus 3, remember I'm combining like terms there, equals 147. Subtract 3 from both sides, 3n equals 144, and n would equal 48. So my first integer would be 48, okay, but they want to know what all 3 of them are. Well, if they're consecutive integers, my second integer is just n plus 1, or 48 plus 1, which is 49. You're just counting up. My third integer, n plus 2, or 48 plus 2, would give me 50. So my 3 integers would be 48, 49, and 50. 3 consecutive integers. So let's try another one like that. The sum of 3 consecutive integers is 48. Okay, I've done the exact same thing I did on the one above. This time I chose x. So x is my first integer, 1 more than x is my second integer, and 2 more than x is my third integer. If I put them all together, because it says sum, we get 48. So here's my first integer, here's my second, here's my third, I get 48. Okay, if you were to solve out that equation, you would find that your first integer is 15. Well, if my first integer is 15, my second integer consecutively would be 16 and 17. So 15, 16, 17 would be your answer. Okay? Now, we need to pay attention to some of these because the wording gets a little tricky. The sum of 2 consecutive even integers. When I'm talking about consecutive even or odd integers, if I'm saying even, it's like 6, 8, 10. If I'm saying odd, 5, 7, 9, 11. Okay? So the sum of 2 consecutive even integers is 118. Okay? So my first integer is still going to be x. Now, if I want to get from 6 to 8, all I do is add 2, right? So in this case, my second even integer would just be x plus 2. And then my third, oh, it only asks for 2. Sorry, 2. So when we put them together, they should equal 118. So x, here's my first integer, plus my second integer should equal 118. Okay? If you were to solve out that equation, you would find out that x is 58. Well, the next even consecutive integer would be 60. So you have 58 and 60. Number 4, the sum of 3 consecutive odd integers is 81. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. First integer is x. If I'm going from 3 to 5, I'm adding 2. So second integer would be x plus 2. And then third integer would be x plus 4. Okay? 1, 2, 3 integers added together equals 81. If you were to solve that equation like I have done here, you would find out that your first integer is 25. I add 2 more and get 27. And if I add 4 more, I get 29. So my 3 consecutive odd integers are 25, 27, and 29. So let's practice. Okay, now there are a multitude of different things that you could see, but let's practice. A square and an equilateral triangle have the same perimeter. Each side of the square is 12 feet. Find the length of each side of the triangle. So notice that I've drawn 2 different pictures here. I have an equilateral triangle and I have a square. Okay. The sides of the square are all 12. The problem told me that. So I went ahead and I labeled everything with 12. Okay. We know that we can get our perimeter by adding up all the sides. So perimeter of this this square here would be 4 times the length. Okay. So the perimeter is 4 times 12, so the perimeter of the square is 48. Okay. We know that the square and the triangle have to have the same perimeter. So if the perimeter of the square is 48, okay, we're going to use that information to find each length of the equilateral triangle. An equilateral triangle has 3 equal sides, so my perimeter would be 3 times the length. So if I know that it has to have a perimeter of 48, I can plug that in. 48 equals 3 times L. And then I would divide by 3, and my length of my triangle would be 16. Okay, let's try last one. The greater of 2 consecutive even integers is 6 less than twice the smaller. Find the number. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is determine that x is going to represent an integer. Okay, the greater of 2 consecutive even integers. So if I was looking for consecutive even integers, I have to do x plus 2 to be that second integer. Okay. So in this case, they're just looking at, it says the greater of the 2. Well, which one's going to be bigger? This one's going to be bigger. So the greater of 2 consecutive integers, x plus 2, is, when you see is, most of the time that is going to mean equals, okay? So if the greater of 2 consecutive integers is, this is 6 less than twice the smaller. Well, twice the smaller integer would be 2x, and 6 less than that would mean that I'm minusing 6. Okay, you see how I've set up my equation here? So to solve it, we don't have any distributive property or anything like that. We do need to get the variables to one side. It does not matter what side you want them on. I'm going to actually go ahead and put them on the right so that they stay positive. So we would subtract x from both sides. 2 would equal x minus 6. And then you would add 6. So x would equal 8. Okay. It asks you to find the integer. So that's fine. X would equal 8. 8 would be the smaller integer. And if you wanted to find the larger integer, it would be 10.